He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
I remember using that old coffee can and pouring straight gasoline, back in the day when you could buy leaded gasoline, right into the top of the carburetor. And as we poured it in, we tried and tried and tried, and that old car just wouldn't start. We poured a little more in, and we tried and tried and tried, and that old car just wouldn't start. And after about the 5th try, there was probably enough gasoline in the top of that carburetor, above the floats and bowls and all the other pieces and parts that we never bothered to take apart. There was enough gasoline in there to make a bowl of cereal. And then we cranked it, and it fired. And when it started, we had flames enough to cook a brontosaurus burger. And as we both backed off, my friend with his eyebrows pretty much cooked off. We stood there looking at it, laughing, terrified, and he said to me, "I think it's the cannutinator valve. You're going to need a new cannutinator valve." Well, you got to be ready for anything in life. As a leader, you better expect the unexpected. You better be ready to innovate, prepared for instant change, because it's coming. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And I don't know if you know this or not, but from that day till this, and it's been a few decades, I have never, ever seen or heard anyone else talk about a cannutinator valve besides that one friend. He knew all about cannutinator valves and terminal bypasses. Now, there is such a thing as a terminal bypass. It comes in a whole lot of different ways, but there's not one in a carburetor. The theory's there, but not the device. But what about a cannutinator valve? No, it was a completely made up thing. You know what else was a completely made up thing? Winged flight. The ability for man to leave the ground, to take advantage of this law of lift, to defy the law of gravity. And the ability to get off the ground has changed everything in the world. From how we get people to the hospital, from how we fight wars, from how we visit other nations. It used to be you had to get on the Titanic or a big boat and sail across the ocean. It could take weeks, days, months, years in some cases to get across, depending on how much money you invested in the seagoing vessel that you were traveling on. But with winged flight, everything changed. The speed of transport, the speed of moving things from one place to the other. I heard someone say the other day, and I know I've read this in other history books, but they said, if we look at all of the military bases scattered across the United States, the reason that one base post, one military outpost is distanced from the next one in the next state over, the next county over, the way that it is, the exact distance from one to the other was measured by horse. Yep, measured by horse. How long would it take you to get a message from this post to that post? That's how they determined. If you went from this post to this post and it took one day, that's just about far enough. Any further, you could have trouble. And so if you look at the way that the posts, the military bases are spread out all over the U.S., you'll see some historicity there that these posts were based, placed, positioned because the greatest innovation we had at the time was to be able to transfer data, information, news, warnings, reports, cries for help by Pony Express. The fastest ponies, the bestest riders, the bravest riders, the ones that knew if I was carrying money from one place to another, I might get horse-jacked. They knew it. They knew it was a dangerous job. They could be attacked by just about anybody out there. Bandits, hoodlums, natives. It didn't matter. But to get from one post to the other was a day's ride. You had to be willing to sit on that horse for a day to get there. You think Uber is uncomfortable. But as time changed, we went from Pony Express and the fastest, horsiest riders we could find to, the telegraph. Now we're talking about a matter of minutes, sometimes seconds. We were able to transmit messages over wires. Now, it took a minute to type out the Morse code to actually get the message into the system. It took a couple of minutes on the other end to transcribe that back into words. And if you messed it up, you might get an entirely different problem than was initially announced. But as things continue to change, we now have the ability to communicate via digital devices and our cell phones or our email. And there are those who are saying there's possibly faster technology than that coming. In fact, those things they called unmanned or unusual aerial phenomenon, those things travel in ways that the human body can't even travel. I mean, if you put a human inside that thing they call the Tic Tac, the way that it was moving around and going underneath the water and coming back out at hundreds plus miles an hour, it would just turn the human body into a bag of jello because the G-force changes would be so dramatic. But of course, we don't know what's inside it. I mean, maybe it's all filled with bubble wrap or styrofoam peanuts. Maybe you could live through that. I don't know. You'd have to ask Jeannie and Jafar if you could actually live through it, because you'll be surprised what you can live through. See, the challenge with a lot of leadership is we get stuck in our old ways. Well, we believe that the way we've always done it is the right way to do it. And there is no other way to do it. We don't want to innovate. We don't want to change. We don't want to transition. On the other end of the spectrum, though, are those that are so constantly chasing the innovation and the change, they get caught in what we would call the shiny object syndrome. They're looking for the newest, flashiest, dazzliest way to get it done. And they don't care what it is that they're getting done as long as they're getting it done in the newest, flashiest, gadgety way, because everybody else is looking at them going, you are on the top of this. You are leading the curve. You are the leading edge of technology and innovation and improvement. And that is so awesome. But just like the Wright brothers, there was a whole lot of failure before there was success. Just like the electric light bulb, a whole lot of failure before there was success. Oppenheimer just was released. I haven't had a chance to see the movie yet, but that's a movie about a whole lot of research, a whole lot of innovation, a whole lot of changing of the world, the landscape, the political landscape for decades, almost a century now since that whole invention came along, the Manhattan Project and the Oppenheimer. That creation of that big boom was immense. I just made that word up. You like that? It was massive, immense, and massive, all rolled into one. In the impact that it had on cultures and society, not to mention science. The ability to look deep enough into a substance to know that the atom is not the smallest thing. There are things inside the atom. And if we separate those things inside the atom, we get a whole kind of different thing. Nuclear energy. Oh, yeah, that's right. It doesn't make any smoke. No carbon in the air. No destruction of the ozone layer. More electricity and energy generated from splitting an atom than pretty much anything else out there. I don't know if you knew this or not, but one of the innovations in the steel age, back when all of what we now call the Rust Belt of Ohio and Pennsylvania, from Pittsburgh all the way up to Erie, Pennsylvania, that whole area was filled with iron ore under the ground. But one of the things they found is that in order to convert iron ore to steel that you could build a building with, you got to get it hot. wood doesn't burn that hot. They had to use something else that burned hotter in order to accomplish liquefying steel so that they could shape it into what they wanted to. And the giant foundries that were all over the East Coast and Middle America, they got their fire hot enough through coal. Yeah, you could burn coal hot enough to melt iron to create these giant beams that we created skyscrapers from. Prior to that revelation, the unexpected discovery that coal burns hot enough to melt metal, we didn't have any building over 3 or 4 stories because you can't support wood to go that high. I mean, there were some courthouses with the little steeples on the top, if you will, but anything bigger than that required a steel buttress inside it or a whole lot of rock. As we discovered the ability to use coal, we discovered a new way to use steel, and hence the skyscrapers of Manhattan and Pittsburgh and all of those big giant buildings along the East Coast that came as a result of coal. So if we innovate to win technology, what will we use to melt steel? How will we build large buildings, airports, hospitals? Are we going back to wood? Because you can't make steel without coal. There's nothing else that burns that hot, unless it's some other kind of chemical concoction, and it's going to take a lot of it. To the best of my knowledge, there's not a way to use solar power to melt steel. Maybe I'm wrong. There's not a way to use batteries to melt steel. Please comment if I'm wrong. Help me to understand, to innovate. I, too, want to expect the unexpected. I want to be on the leading curve of innovation. I want to be ready for anything. I'm not an old dog stuck in old tricks, but I haven't seen any other way to melt steel yet besides a really hot fire. And some of those really hot fires are done with coal. And there are not a whole lot of other resources, maybe natural gas, to do that. But, oh, by the way, we're trying to get rid of that, too. So what will innovation look like? Well, some people say innovation right now looks like AI. I have my reservations about AI. I have my reservations about anything that thinks faster, smarter, and with less emotional human touch than me. I worry sometimes about my phone. Just this morning, if you pay much attention to the podcast, it live started 3 times. It did. Because the video that is the roll-in didn't want to play on the iPad. It was on the screen, but the minute I put it up to go onto the broadcast, didn't want to play. Why? Well, no reason. No excuse. I mean, I closed the app and opened it again. I started the video again. I chose another video to start. Nothing worked until I rebooted the device. How many times can we take that risk when we're counting on AI to, write the next textbook? When we're counting on AI to run through the digital process of thinking through an open heart surgery and using robotic tools to accomplish it, do we have time for a reboot? If we have to turn the entire system off and start all over again, what does that look like? As leaders, we've got to be ready for anything. But part of being ready for anything is understanding what was and what could be. We have to live in the moment that we're in right now. We've got to be present where we are. We've got to be aware of what's going on right now. Who are the people around us? What do they need? How do we help them? What can we offer? How can we serve them? How can we add value to them? We should be asking that every minute of every day as leaders. And simultaneously, we need to be asking what happened in the past that we need to learn from and what could happen in the future that we haven't thought of yet. Do we take the time to think? Do we take the time to process through the information of what was and what is so that we can better plan for what is to come or create what is to come? Leaders who get stuck in their old ways, this is the way we've always done it, those are not innovators. Those are not people who bother to understand people better. Those are not the kind of leaders who are going to ask the question, what about this change in culture? What about the way things used to be done? What about the way things ought to be done? When I look at the people that I work with every day, I wonder, do they really get it? Do they understand that time has passed them by, that the new social norms are completely different than the ones that they're living in? I also often wonder, though, is it possible that the new social norms are an attempted innovation that's still in its failure process. It's still got a lot of learning to do. Still got a whole lot to figure out before it becomes the next thing. Before it can be completely adopted, these social changes have to be measured against their effectiveness, measured against the damage they've done, measured against the things that they've improved and the things that they've destroyed. Innovation isn't always the best thing. There are types of innovation that we look at and go, yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that. Oppenheimer may be one of those. I believe he was quoted, the inventor of the atomic bomb was quoted later as saying, "I've done the unthinkable. I've given the world something they should have never had." Now, others would say, well, it was great that he did, and that he did what he did when he did, because had he not done what he did when he did, the Germans would have. And World War II would have had an entirely different outcome. The Japanese-German alliance may have been an entirely different impact on the globe. Was it a good thing or a bad thing? Well, only the fruit will tell. Only the long-term results will tell. But the unexpected sometimes doesn't look like that right now. The unexpected that we expect might be in relationships. It might be in finance. You might wake up before Christmas while you're planning your Christmas shopping and realize that your dollars don't work. I'm already experiencing it on certain websites where I have a subscription for downloading a program or uploading this program or the content that I provide in my online courses. And I've, in the last 30 days, encountered 3 of those different online things that they want me to pay in Bitcoin, or they want me to pay with a specific type of a credit card. And if I pay with one debit card and then need to change that to another debit card based on where the money is, based on the clients that paid me, they don't allow that. So I have to figure out how to transfer money from one account to another account that is all digital and online, because they will not accept the change of a debit card. Their system doesn't tolerate it. You can reload the one you already had, but you have to figure out how to move money to it. You can't add another card. You can completely delete your account and start over. Is that innovation? Is that expected change or unexpected change? Well, what happens when you wake up on Christmas morning and you can't even buy a gallon of milk because the currency that you trade in is no longer accepted? Well, it's one thing to say you've got to update your credit card or go to another credit card or find another way to pay online, whether it's Apple Pay or Google Pay or PayPal or whatever. It's an entirely different thing to say, I got $3 in my pocket and I need a gallon of milk for the baby, and know that your $3, A, isn't enough for a gallon of milk, and B, it's not a currency we accept here. If you started to see already signs that say cash not accepted, change is coming. Are you ready for it? Are you prepared to innovate, to come up with a new way? What if we do end up back in a barter system? What do you got to offer? Is it things? Is it substance? Is it you? Have you studied something other people haven't studied so that you have something to offer? Is your entire world built around digital? Are you counting on AI to make you famous, to make you wealthy, to make you secure? Are you counting on this digital tool that can be turned off at a moment's notice, stripped from you, told you don't have access? I mean, how many people were up in arms when a former president said, we're going to ban TikTok in the United States? And the reason they were up in arms, not only because they like to play on the app, but because their entire income is based on ad revenue and product sales generated on that app. It only takes a pen stroke for something like that to come to an end. You think you have control. You think you know what's coming next. But your ability to innovate, your ability to bob and weave, your ability to change direction on a moment's notice, that's a skill set that you've got to master. And as a leader, you've got to be able to read the tea leaves, so to speak, and understand the people around you, know what their needs and wants and desires are. You've got to be able to lead them through that. You've got to be able to recognize the pitfalls that lie in front of them, because if you lose a team member that you count on because they weren't ready for the shift in the world, in the politics, in the culture, in the society, in the financial world, if they weren't ready for that and you lose them as a team member, what happens to the rest of your team? If they have to bow out because The heat is too high. What happens to the rest of your team? Can you function without them? How will you function without them? It may be a better question. Good leaders know to expect the unexpected. Their preparedness, their readiness knows that I may have no idea what's coming next. But the most important thing that I can do is be agile, to be flexible, constantly flexible, willing to try and do whatever it takes to continue to move forward. Watch a good runner in football, a good runner in soccer, a good driving guard coming down the court. They know there are going to be obstacles. Not only do they know that there are going to be obstacles, there are going to be obstacles that will move. This is not your ropes course. This is not your obstacle course from basic training or your obstacle course from high school, where once you've mastered that 12-foot wall, you've mastered that 12-foot wall. No, these obstacles move. They change. They get bigger. They get faster. They get well-trained. They understand what your last move was, and they adapt to that. So does AI. So does the digital world. So does political and financial upheaval. They're not just obstacles that you can memorize and move around like a video game you've played 47,000 times. No, these are dynamic obstacles. They're reading you and your responses to them, and they're preparing to stop you anyway. Readiness looks like I've got something up my sleeve nobody's ever seen before. Innovation looks like I have ideas that I've been perfecting in silence and nobody knows they're coming. Expect the unexpected as a leader. Be ready to bob and weave and avoid the obstacles that are actually, literally, chasing you down. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.